It's just an unbelievable honor for me to introduce Tom Brokaw to all of you. He is just such a dear friend. Tom, we've been talking about you pretty much all day because we keep talking about the new vision for the MMRF, and that vision really is communicated so beautifully in the film that you'll remember you and Dick Parsons and I took care of in New York that day. And it really all started because Tom and I were doing another piece for Dateline, and there was a bit of a break, and we were just sitting on a couch talking, and he said to me, you know, my dream is to actually believe that every myeloma patient gets treated the same way. And the reason he was saying that was because both Tom and I have always had access to the most amazing doctors and the most amazing advice that you could ever have. And on top of that, Tom also has this wonderful daughter who is a physician, and she's always his second opinion right by his side. And we both acknowledge that there are a lot of people that aren't as lucky as Tom and I are. And he always said that he wanted to make a difference in every patient's life. So when he was talking in the film about supporting that patient in West Kansas and making sure that all of us at the MMRF did what we could to build a database and make sure that patient could find the best doctor as close to him as they possibly could, but eventually know the right treatment and get on the right trial, those were all things that came from the heart for Tom. So you all know him as this amazing historian and journalist. I know him as an extraordinary patient and friend, and I'm just so happy to see him looking good and healthy and knowing you are going to see those grandchildren get older. Thank you.
Thank you all very much. You may want to reconsider that standing ovation when I share with you some breaking news. I have just this morning accepted the position as the special assistant to Donald Trump, President of the United States. I really feel it's a privilege, quite honestly, and that's not hyperbole on my part, to be here as part of the congregation of St. Kathy. I know that we all come here for very much common cause, but also with our separate interests in all of that. So I thought I would just take a little time and share with you some of my personal observations and professional observations as well. First of all, I wanted to bring you all into what has been the summer from hell for the Brokaws. We have a branch in Montana, and we have a very lively lifestyle out there. My wife rides horses 3 times a day. I'm a fisherman. I hunt in the fall. It's a big, remote place. We just can't wait to get there. So this summer, on the 29th of June, we pulled into the driveway, and we have a new Labrador puppy that we were a little concerned about. The Labrador puppy escaped from the car, and so Meredith followed it down to the riverbank. I dropped off the bags in the house, came out, and saw an expression of alarm on our ranch manager as he was running the 4-wheeler down to the riverbank and found Meredith with a very badly fractured ankle. We had been at the ranch for 5 minutes at that point. It was going to define the rest of the summer. So we got her into the local hospital and then to Billings, Montana. And a lot of my friends said, well, Billings, why didn't you go to New York? And I said, because in Billings, Montana, the trauma surgeon spends all day fixing up drunken cowboys, construction workers, and other people who've been in barroom fights. He really knows what he's doing, it turns out. So we got through that okay. And then I went away for a conference, and Meredith emailed me in the middle of it saying, we've got a brush fire racing through the ranch at the moment. We're thinking we can find it to about 8 acres. And we managed to do that. And then I came back, and those of us in our business, as you may have noticed in the past, we have a severe hearing loss. We've spent all those years with those things in our ears, so I have hearing aids. Walter Cronkite, who was the dean of all of us, obviously, had a hard time acknowledging it. He had really profound hearing loss at the end of his life and his career. And he had a very elaborate setup, and he would go out in enormous pride, and he would say, the acoustics aren't very good in here. And finally, he just got to saying, oh, goddamn it, I'm deaf as a post. I can't hear anything. So I have these hearing aids, and I put them in a case next to my bed. And I forgot to kind of lock down one of them so it gave off that high-pitched sound. The new puppy heard that as a dog whistle. And for the first time in the hearing aid industry, they had a Labrador puppy destroy 3 hearing aids in the case. So we got through all of that. That was going to be okay. And then 2.5 weeks ago, I woke up in the morning in Montana, and I looked out the window, and it was a kaleidoscope. Nothing matched, and I couldn't get my vision to focus. So I stepped out of bed, and I reeled across the room, completely out of balance, and I thought, this has got to be very temporary. And I went to the shower and took a cold shower and took some water, thinking it was hydration. It didn't get any better. I went down into the living room, and I was in my robe, and I was reeling around, and I said to Meredith, something's going on. I've got severe vertigo. We have a daughter who is an emergency room physician, who is kind of, if you're in trouble anywhere in the world, she's the one you want at your side. She's worked in Pakistan and Central Africa. She runs San Francisco General Hospital ER. Before that, she was in Santa Fe. She looked at me and she said, get in the outfit right now, we've got to go to town. This could be a number of things. So they threw me into the pickup. By then I could no longer walk. And we went into our very good small local hospital, and they did a CAT scan and MRI and said, not cardio, not stroke. That's good news, but we don't know what the hell it is. I had the privilege of being on the Mayo board for 12 years, and I still do a lot of work for them. And so I emailed the CEO of the Mayo Clinic, who is a neurologist. And I said, John, something's going on, I don't know what it is. And he wrote right back, and he said, we're sending a plane. We're going to get you to Mayo as quickly as possible. He kind of thought that he knew what it was, and so I get medevac to the Mayo Clinic and arrive at 2 in the morning, and for the next 2 hours, I'm going through a battery of tests. And what I have is something called vestibular neuritis. It's a very small population of people who have it. It's not terminal. It is more than an aggravation, and it affects your whole sense of balance because your inner ear drives that, and it sends the wrong signals to the brain. So it reminded me of my college days because I was staggering across every room that I stepped into. And I couldn't quite get it under control, but now I have to a pretty good degree. It can go on for 2 months or 3 months or so. And what it does is give you a great inconvenience. So although I don't need it all the time, I carry a cane, and there is no medical solution to it. What you have is a series of therapeutic programs of balance, using your eye, closing one eye and doing other things, and I can see where it's getting better. I tell you that story not out of an attempt to seek your sympathy, but to remind us all about just how complicated the human body is. And you're grateful when something like this comes along because it can be cured. And it is not in any way going to be a permanent debilitating condition. The reason that we're all here today, is that we're here because of other conditions, mostly because of a cancer called multiple myeloma, which was kind of a vague phrase in my life until one day at the Mayo Clinic, after I'd been complaining of back pain for some time and all the orthopedists were just saying it was your lifestyle, my very wise internist said, back pain shouldn't last that long. I'm going to run some blood and see what we find out. Didn't give me any indication at all about what the results may be. And on his own, it's highly unusual. He's a trained internist, but a brilliant doctor. Within 3 hours, he determined I had multiple myeloma, called in an oncologist, and between the two of them, they then broke the news to me. the oncologist, who seemed to have been out of school the day that they mentioned bedside manners, turned to me and said, "Well, you have a malignancy. It's called multiple myeloma." These were his very first phrases. You know people who have died from this. Geraldine Ferraro, the former woman who ran for vice president of the United States, Frank Reynolds, the ABC anchorman. I thought to myself quickly, my God, that's what he died. I had no idea. And I was on two different frames of mind. I was A, a journalist, and B, someone who was just told that he had a cancer that in fact was incurable at that stage. And I was trying to sort the two of them out. So we worked our way through what the consequences were going to be, how it would likely affect me. And that moment, that day, was the rebirth of Tom Brokaw. I had just been told I had a terminal cancer, but it gave me a new life. And it's what brings me here today. Because I felt an obligation as a human being, as a citizen, and as a journalist to share what I was learning about this condition. And I entered that very vast universe of people with one kind of cancer or another. And the fact of the matter is, it has in so many ways made my life much richer. I've had the luckiest life of anybody I knew. I grew up in a working class family in South Dakota, married an astonishing woman that many of you know. And 55 years later, we're still together through good news and bad news, including cancer. But cancer gave me a new reason to want to live. And it gave me a new mission as a human being about the relationships that I would develop with other people. There isn't a day that goes by, including again this morning, that I don't hear from someone saying, I have a friend who has got multiple myeloma. Can you give a call? What should they know that they are not being told by their physicians? And I don't feel any kind of Boy Scout obligation to do that. I feel like it is part and parcel of this universe to which we all belong. Our health really is the most precious thing that we have. And when something comes along to send it down a road not of our choosing, then we have to make the best of it. And the way to make the best of that is to become a community. And no one has created a more effective community, a more caring community than Kathy has. And all of you, by your presence here, have also made a contribution to that community. So it has given me a renewed sense of life, a renewed sense of why I may be here, that I can do besides just saying, I'll be back with more right after this. And it has also intellectually challenged me in so many ways. I read everything that I can now about cancer. And if you are a cancer patient, you have an entirely different attitude than you do when you're not a cancer patient. When you're not a cancer patient, you can be sympathetic. You can't be empathetic until you're a cancer patient. It's then that you want to know what's going on in there. What's the system doing? And so I absorb as much as I possibly can about this condition, which has been called, as you know, the emperor of all diseases. And I'm so struck every day by the manifestation of cancer as it comes into individuals or different parts of our country. And I get more and more involved in it as a member of this great, great society, this population of human beings, and how we can become more healthy in our lives. As I look across this room, I know that we have a lot of the bells and whistles that a lot of people would envy, the kind of life that we have and what we can do. But once you become involved with cancer as a patient, all that goes off to the side. What you really care about is having a quality life and having good physicians. I'm now about to share with you something that will appear in the New York Times in the next 10 days or so. Because of my experiences with the medical community in America, I have been thinking more and more about how we are not listening enough to the practitioners. We are going to have some kind of a new health care bill in the next year. But the people that I have come to care about won't be consulted. These were the neurologists who came up with a prescription for me for dealing with this. These are the oncologists who are working, even as we sit here today, in labs trying to find a new answer. These are the geniuses at Sloan, Dana-Farber, and MD Anderson, and the Hutch, who are trying to determine whether we are in fact at the verge of having an enormous breakthrough in immunotherapy. And they're spending all of their psychic and intellectual and physical energy in trying to do something for the rest of us. Some of them are quite well rewarded. The rest of them are really foot soldiers and try to make us healthy and give us the quality of life that good health brings to you. And they're not also necessarily involved in oncology. Just as a couple of examples of the physicians that I'm writing about, the young man who repaired Meredith's ankle. I'm always interested in how people choose their specialty. I should say parenthetically, we have 8 doctors in our family, by the way, including 2 nationally recognized sports orthopedists. So when Meredith broke her ankle, we were able, through the modern digital age, to send through the smartphones the x-rays. Meredith's brother in Seattle, who'd been the Seahawks doctor until about 5 years ago, and a nephew in South Dakota who is nationally recognized as one of the great sports orthopedists. They were able to look at the fractures, and then we were able to put online with him Dr. Hobby, a young man who grew up in Billings, Montana, went to the University of Washington, which is a great school, great medical school, did his graduate work at UC Davis in California and also in Santa Fe, which is one of the great trauma centers in America because they're all running into each other with motorcycles or getting drunk and falling off the bar stool in New Mexico. And the 3 of them were able to talk to each other about the best way of approaching it. And that, too, is the unrecognized part of the universe of healthcare. The enormous amount of cooperation that goes on and the sharing constantly. There's some big egos, obviously, but at the same time, most of them are determined to work together in a community sense. And so when we went back from Meredith's last checkup, I said to Dr. Hobby, why orthopedics? And he kind of smiled and he said, my dad was a carpenter. And he said, I worked beside him. I like to fix things. So I shared that story with a writer friend of mine, Tom McGuane, who had been at the Mayo Clinic with some heart issues. And he said, I have another physician for you that you have to talk to. He grew up in Salt Lake City, where his family had an auto business. And he loved to take the old used cars and take all the wiring out of it and rewire his electric train set. He's now the greatest electrophysiologist for heart conditions in the world because of that. But he lives in that part of the world. He doesn't demand a lot of attention. He's not out there raising his hand saying, listen to me, listen to me. He's spending his whole day trying to help other people. And then I talked about the mosaic of healthcare. When I first went to the Sloan Kettering, I began to ask people where they were from. Here were just a few of the answers. Just before I went under to have my spine repaired, I heard this Russian accent and turned to the woman and said, Moscow? And she said, yes. 2 degrees from Moscow, I came here and replicated him in America because they didn't want to accept him. The Argentinian woman who ran the stem cell program at Sloan said, we're not a melting pot, we're a puree. I always look at the name tags. I've had Slovak nurses, and I've had Czech nurses, and I've had Norwegian therapists of one kind or another. It is the great, great mirror of who we are as an immigrant nation. And their single dedication is in making this place a healthier nation. They're thrilled to have the opportunity to be medical people in America. And we don't hear enough from them about how we can repair, which we need to repair, the healthcare system in America, about who has access, who pays for it, how the distribution program works, because these are the people who are on the front lines. And then in oncology, same thing. I went to see Ken Anderson at Dana-Farber in Boston. He took me in, and there was a Turkish researcher, about 5'1", a woman. He said, she's going to make a breakthrough. She has figured out how to unleash the killer cells so we can get at the cancer cells. And that's really the verge of where we're going now with immunotherapy. And they come here from all over the world because of the promise of freedom that they have and the resources that they have and the rewards that they'll get, which are psychic and also financial. But most of all, they're driven by this enormous curiosity and wanting to be a scientist. I'm a guy who got through biology 1 only because there was a really cute girl next to me who was very smart. And that's how I made it. But I am in awe of the work that is done, and especially the work that is being done in the field that Nancy, that Kathy so concentrates on and shares with the rest of the world. So there are 2 universes at the moment, it seems to me, in America. One universe driven by the national political culture, which is at war with each other and not making any real effort, so far as I can tell, and I've been at this for a long time, to find some kind of common ground. It's not how do we meet in the middle and move the nation forward. It's how do we stake out the opposite ends, and I get ahead of you just a little bit, because that's all I ask. I was in Powell, Wyoming recently, a wonderful small town, classic scenic town, 6,500, 7,000 people, county fair, junior college, newspaper, went 70% for Trump. I went back, they'd vote 69% for Trump now, because they feel there's no one that looks like them on national television or in the newspapers expressing what they feel about government regulations and where we need to go. And I think the single greatest political challenge that we have is how to close that gap. And if you want to look for a model, look to Kathy and look to the foundation that brings you here today. Because from wherever we come from, whatever our aspirations are, we're focused on a common enemy. And that common enemy can be life-threatening, and it can be, at some point, I'm persuaded, maybe not in my lifetime, it can be eliminated. Now, some of you know that I wrote a book called The Greatest Generation. It was easily the most instructive experience of my life. I was born in 1940, so my first memories of life were of the war. We were on an army base in southwestern South Dakota, and then after the war, I was in that quasi-military environment, the Corps of Engineers building the big public works projects on the Missouri River and across America. We were kickstarting America again, and all the people around me were veterans, and I didn't know it at the time because they didn't talk about it. They were just there to get things done. Some of them had gotten special training to be air conditioning people. Others had gotten advanced degrees in engineering. But they all had a common cause, which was they'd given up 5 years of their life for this country, and they want to make it as great as they possibly could. And they had differences. But they'd find ways at the end of the day, through the American Legion or one of the other service organizations, to get the things done. They didn't wait for the government to tell them they'd organize the baseball games, and they'd sponsor the Boy Scout and Girl Scout troops. And they gave us reason to have faith in this immigrant nation. And then we began to lose that. So when I went to Normandy for the first time on the 40th anniversary of D-Day, I was not at all completely prepared for how it would change my life and what lessons it would give to the rest of us. I was thinking, I was training for a marathon, I can run in the hills, there'll be great meals, wonderful wines in that part of France. And the first day I walked on the beach, I went on with 2 members of the Big Red One. One, 2 weeks before the end of the war, lost both legs, became a school teacher in Florida. The other one was a simple working class guy from Pennsylvania who earned the Medal of Honor with the most heroic action you can possibly imagine. protecting the withdrawal of his entire squadron by faking his own death in a foxhole, manning a machine gun. So when the Germans went by him, he would turn around and shoot him and then fake his own death again. And that went on all night long. He saved his squad, and when they rescued him, he said, "I want to go to the chapel." And they said, "Okay, why?" And he said, "Because there was a German out there who could have killed me and did not." And I could hear him muttering and crying, and he could have killed me and he didn't. I want to pray for him. Well, I was so staggered by all of this that I went back to a small cafe, and a tall, raw-boned man that I recognized immediately came over and he said, "Tom, Sam Gibbons from Florida, Congressman." I said, "I know who you are, Congressman. What are you doing here?" And he said, "Well, I was here 40 years ago. I jumped in with the 82nd Airborne." And I said, "My God, I had no idea." Well, he said, "I'd never talk about it." I said, "Could you just tell me a little bit?" And he started to talk. And as he talked, he began to cry. And his wife came to the table and said, "I've never heard these stories before. You don't have to do this, Sam." And he said, "Yes, I do." And he kept on going. And he reached into his pocket and he pulled out something I had never seen or even read about at that point. He pulled out what every airborne member was given before they jumped: a brass clicker. In the middle of the night, total darkness, completely scattered behind enemy lines. They had no way of reconnecting except squad leader, one click. Somebody would hear it go, "I hear you, I'm coming." They didn't say, "I hear you. Are you a member of the Tea Party? Because I don't know that I can fight with you unless you're a member of the Tea Party. You're a Republican or a Democrat? Jewish? You're African American?" They didn't do that. "I'm coming." I believe this should be a metaphor for American life. In whatever draws you to your daily undertakings, whether it's business or education or medicine or social causes, we need to find a way to metaphorically send a signal: "I'm here," and know that we'll get the response: "I'm coming." Kathy has done just that, and all of you, by your presence here today, have re-enlisted as citizens in the great cause of helping out your fellow citizens. So I'm humbled to be in your presence, and I'm grateful to all of you. Thank you all very much.